Okay, this is probably one of the nerdier things I've worked on, but I'm super excited about it, and I love the way it turned out, so I want to share it with you guys. If you've been following my content, whether it be my videos, my streams, or my shorts, you've probably seen that I spend a fair amount of time in the terminal. And in my opinion, I have a pretty decent terminal setup. Most of it is thanks to Scott Hanselman and the videos on his channel. He was the one that really turned me on to being able to sort of express yourself in the terminal using this really nifty library called oh-my-posh. And so if you ever see my terminal on screen, it'll look something like this. And this appearance is all being driven by a configuration for oh-my-posh. And if you're not familiar with oh-my-posh, it's very similar to another framework out there called oh-my-zsh. If you're in the Linux or the Mac ecosystem, it kind of has that same idea to it. And one of the things oh-my-posh lets you do is it actually lets you define segments that can be produced from the output of commands. So you can actually have your shell, your prompt configuration actually run commands to produce some sort of side effect or some sort of output, and then display that as part of your prompt. So if we're looking at my terminal here, we could actually have some sort of command that generates a segment that's included in my prompt. And I was laying in bed the other night, a couple nights ago, watching the Steelers and the Packers game, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool when I'm streaming if I could have the live viewer count here in my prompt segment? Where that idea came from, I have no idea, but because I know how to code, I can take an idea like that and immediately go to work and try to implement it and actually start adding a little bit more delight into my life, because I have that skill. So it's one of the, I think, the most empowering things about being able to code. And so I wanted to kind of share this with you guys. And I'm not going to go straight to the code. First, I just want to kind of show you how this works in practicality. So right now, you'll see you don't see a viewer count currently in my prompt, and that's because I haven't actually added it to my configuration. And so if I go over to my oh-my-posh configuration here, you'll see I've kind of stubbed out this command already. So you'll see I've got a segment in here that says it's a type of command. And then for the properties here, you'll see I've defined a particular shell that I want to use, and then the command I want to run with that shell. In this case, I'm using this new feature in .NET 10 to be able to just run a single file using .NET. So I'm saying .NET and then the path to a file to execute the code that's in that file. And we'll get to that code in a minute, but I just kind of want to show you what this looks like. So hopefully you'll be as excited about it as I am. Now, the other thing I've done is oh-my-posh actually calls out that sometimes when you use command segments like this, they can be a little slow. So you probably are going to want to set a cache for this prompt segment, and you're probably going to want to set it for something like 30 seconds or 60 seconds if you do something like this. Otherwise, every time you type something in a terminal or enter a command, it's going to take a minute for that prompt to be redrawn, because it's actually executing this command and it's spawning a new process, executing whatever code or whatever script that you've told it to execute to generate the output that you're going to show. However, now with that added to my configuration, I should be able to write that out to disk. And if we come back to my shell, we can see we now are getting a viewer count that shows up as part of my prompt segment. Now, obviously, I'm not live right now, so I'm doing a little bit of fakiness to get this number to display. But you can see after so many seconds, we'll actually get a new value. So right now, this is cached. So you can see I don't get a new value, I don't get a new value, I don't get a new value, but now I get a new value, right? So that 30-second cache that I set as part of my oh-my-posh configuration means that I can still have the speed of my prompt without giving that up all the time on every single command, but I can still see the current viewer count from my live stream. Now, again, I'm not live right now, so this is a fake number. It's just random data. But the way I'm actually getting this viewer count is by talking to the YouTube API. So the YouTube API is okay. I'm not going to say it's my favorite thing in the world, but it's okay. But they have this endpoint that basically allows you to grab a list of live broadcasts. And in the data that the live broadcast list endpoint returns, you can get the first live broadcast that's in there. You can actually query this endpoint to only give you live broadcasts that are actually active, meaning you're actually live. And then within that data, there's actually a property for viewer count. So it's relatively easy to actually get the data. All you have to do is hit this one endpoint, grab the first item in what's returned to you, and then grab that viewer count property and actually output it to the console. And then oh-my-posh will use that in your prompt segment. Now, the one tricky part about this is the YouTube API actually doesn't support non-user OAuth flows. So you do have to do a little bit of work to implement an OAuth flow to allow a user to actually sign in, consent to your application, having permissions to manage your YouTube account, and then generate an access token that you can then make a request to the API. So the vast majority of the code in this index.cs file is largely about getting some settings that have to do with that OAuth flow. So that first step is loading those settings like client ID, client secret, the token URI, the auth URI, all those kind of configuration variables that you need when you're dealing with an OAuth flow. And then actually getting the token. Now this is a little interesting because the YouTube API does support, or the Google OAuth flows do support refresh tokens. So as part of my implementation here, I do actually try to persist the token. So the first time we come into this path, we'll check to see if the token already has been persisted to a file. If it hasn't, then we'll actually go and get that access token for the first time. And that's when we'll actually go through that full OAuth flow that we've all been through a half dozen times in a half dozen applications that we use every day. And then it will get that token response with the refresh token and we'll persist that to disk. Now, if we've already been through this process, what we'll do is we'll actually load the token from disk and we'll check to see if it's expired. If it is expired, then we'll go ahead and use our refresh token to get a new access token and save that back to the disk, or we'll just use the existing one if it isn't actually expired. So I'm not going to go into this too much in depth because there's nothing really that interesting about it. It's just you got to go to the docs, you got to implement the OAuth flow. It's standard stuff, boilerplate code. But the interesting part is actually getting the live viewer count. So once we actually have our token response, once we actually have an access token that we can use, this is where we actually hit that YouTube API endpoint, this live broadcast endpoint, to actually get our stats and our viewer count. So right here you can see this is my fake viewer count that I've been showing you during the video. That's not real. I don't really have 700 people watching one of my live streams right now as I record this, but I wanted to be able to actually show the number in the prompt segment. And the nice thing is when I actually have this implemented, whenever there isn't a live stream happening, my prompt segment just doesn't include this segment because there's no value for it. So it's a relatively straightforward solution. There's probably a half dozen ways you could probably accomplish the same functionality, getting this live viewer count in your prompt, but this is the way I went about doing it, using my existing oh-my-posh configuration, my knowledge of the YouTube APIs, and then using C#'s single file support, which is really cool. So all the code is basically just lives in this single index.cs file right here. It's a 4 or 5 static methods that I call, and then return a response and print something out to the console so that oh-my-posh can display it in my prompt segment. Anyways, I know it's a super simple thing that I built, right? There's nothing complex, there's nothing life-changing about it, but it's a little bit of delight that my ability to code was able to bring to me. And so hopefully what I'm hoping by sharing with you guys my excitement and my enjoyment out of this is that maybe it'll inspire you to find something like this in your life, or maybe in your setup, where with a little bit of code and maybe a little bit of ingenuity, you can add something to it that when you sit down to use your tools and interact with your setup, you're just a little bit happier. You're just a little bit more excited to be there and be using your setup than you were before. So if you have any questions, obviously I'm happy to answer it. I'll put the code for this script up on GitHub, and I'll link that in the description. And then obviously, if you have any questions, just drop a comment or find me on Bluesky. Happy to talk to you about it. As you can tell, I I'm very excited about a single number displaying in my terminal prompt now. So if you tune into my live streams, I'll probably point it out to you about 10 times in the 2 or 3 hours that I'm live. In any event, I hope this was helpful. I hope maybe you found this enjoyable, or maybe you got some ideas or some inspirations from it. And if I don't see you in another video or another live stream or another short today, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, bye.